Hello friends, welcome back to the Python programming session. In the earlier session, we had covered inheritance, which is an important feature of the OOPS concept. Today, let's move on to encapsulation, which is also one of the important feature of the OOPS concept. What is encapsulation? It is the process of wrapping up of variables and methods under a single unit. It acts as a protective shield which prevents access of data and methods outside of the class. Suppose we have some variables and methods declared within the class and we do not want it to be accessed by other classes or outside the class. In such cases, we can encapsulate the data and methods by adding prefixing it with double underscore. So when we do that, it becomes the data or variable methods become private in nature. Once they become private, it is accessible only in that particular class and it cannot be accessed by other classes and outside of the class. So in this way, it provides security by hiding the data from the outside world. It also prevents the data from being modified by accident. So if it gets modified by accident outside the class, this can be prevented and taken care of. Encapsulation can also be achieved by making the variables and methods as private. So encapsulation can be achieved by making the variables and methods as private in nature. So now let's take one example in which we have a university and the university has got two departments, a CSC department and an electronics department. CSC department has got its own students records and the electronic department has got its own student record. So let's consider a CSC department as a class and an electronic department as another class. And the student records are nothing but class members. Here, the CSC department personnel cannot access the electronic student records. Similarly, electronic department personnel cannot access the CSC student records. So here they are protecting their records within their own departments. Similarly, a class when it protects its variables and methods to be accessed only by within the class, then we say it is encapsulated. Means we are making it private only to that particular class and it cannot be accessed by other classes. So this is what is called as encapsulation. In order to achieve encapsulation for variables and methods, we have to prefix double underscore and we have to give the name of the variable. Similarly, double underscore and the name of the method for method encapsulation. Now let's look into one of the code and see how it works. Let me say I have my class called rectangle. I'm having a variable called length which is equal to 10 and a private variable. So I'm prefixing it with double underscore equal to 20. Now let me have my display method and self as the parameter and let me say print self dot double underscore breadth. And now let me create an object for the class rectangle. And now let me call the display method. So friends, here I am having length as a public variable. It can be accessed throughout the program. And breadth is a private variable which can be accessed only in the rectangle class. And I'm having a display method within the rectangle class and which is printing the breadth value. So when I create the object and call the display method, I get the value 20 because this display method is part of the class rectangle and it can access the private variable. So we are getting 20 as the output. So now Let me remove this obj.display and say obj.length and run the code. I get the output 10 because length is a public variable and it can be accessed outside the class as well. Now let me change it to underscore underscore breadth and run the code. So here we get the attribute error because we are trying to access the breadth variable outside of this particular class, which is not possible for private variables. So we get the attribute error indicating object has no attribute underscore underscore breadth. So this is how we can prevent the private variables from being accessed outside the class. Now let me remove this particular code and let me define another class called area, which inherits the rectangle class. And now within this particular area class, let me say call my init method with self as the parameter. And now let me say print self dot underscore underscore breadth. And here let me call my area class. So when I create an object for area, the first method which gets called is the init method, and it says self dot print the breadth variable's value. Then we get an attribute error. Here the class area is a derived class because it inherits the base class rectangle. Actually speaking, the derived class can access the variables of the base class, but since here breadth is a private variable, it cannot access that particular variable. It gives an attribute error. But now instead of breadth, if I give length, which is a public variable, then the output gets printed on the console. 10 gets printed. So even in the derived classes, the private variables cannot be accessed. So it cannot be accessed by any other class other than the class in which it has been defined. So this shows that through encapsulation, we can prevent the private variables from being accessed outside the class and within other classes as well. So having covered encapsulation of variables, now let's move on to encapsulation of private method. For this, let me say my class, and let me define my private method. So I have to double underscore and then give the method name. This one self as the parameter. Now let me print I am display1. Now let me have another method which is disp2, which is taking self as the parameter, and let me print I am display2. And now let me call self dot disp1 function. Now here let me create an object for my class. So friends, here I've created an object for my class. I'm having two methods in my class. One is a private method and one is a public method. And outside the class, I'm trying to access the private method. So in this case, we get an attribute error because object has no attribute display1. outside the class, we cannot access the private methods. It can be accessed only within the class. Now, how can we access this private method then? So in this case, if I give display2, then display2 is a public method. So it prints I am display2 and it calls the display1 private method and it prints I am display1. So in this way, we can prevent the access of display1 outside the class, and when we call display2, we can access the display1 method because it's part display2 is part of the my class method. So it gets called and it displays both the details. So now when I run, I get I am display2 and then it goes to display1 method and prints I am display1. But outside the class, directly if I call display1, it gives an attribute error. So from this we can say that by giving double underscore, we can make the method or a variable private and it can be accessed only in that particular class and it cannot be accessed in any other class or outside of the class. Hope so friends, it is clear for you. The encapsulation in Python programming language. It is nothing but wrapping up of variables and methods under a single unit. It acts as a protective shield which prevents access of data and methods outside the class. It prevents the data from being modified by accident. It can be achieved by making the variables and methods as private by prefixing it with double underscore. Hope so friends, this is clear for you. If you have any doubts, please do reach to me out in the comment section. If you like my video, click on the like button and please do subscribe to get notifications of my new videos. Till then, see you. Bye bye.